We're seeing people try to control him. When you have somebody as cautious as Senator Corker choosing what he says and nobody contradicting him, if you see the ecology of news and politics, these are messages going out for a purpose. I wish the Republican Party would step up, but people are sending out a signal that something is wrong.
And James, I mean, Vanity Fair says that has sources.
Tom Barrack,
go ahead,
wasn't that Tom Barrack piece in the in the Washington Post this morning was very, very meaningful. He is someone who, as was reported, is as a lifelong friend, and also someone who has been talking to reporters all along off the record, but rarely on the record. And he chose to give this interview at length and say the things he said. That tells you something about the state, or about what he believes the state of affairs are in the president's mind and in that White House.
And James, Vanity Fair says it has sources who claim Steve Bannon said there's only a 30% chance of the president making it through his term, that Bannon told the president that he should be more worried about the 25th Amendment, which allows the cabinet and vice president to remove him from office, than impeachment. Do you buy the idea that the feeling is really so dire? Or, I mean, who knows what Steve Bannon's impulses or motivation is?
Exactly. Who knows what Steve Bannon may be saying or why. But I do think it's significant that lots of people who are around the president in the national security apparatus are sending out messages as clearly as they can that something is awry, and that we do have Republicans who are they're in the middle, I think, of a historic transition where some of them are beginning to say, look, we have concerns, and the silence of the others speaks volumes. The fact, in any other administration, you would have, as soon as some of these critiques came out, you would have the majority leader, you'd have the Speaker of the House, you had all these people saying, oh, no, nothing like that is true, we have absolute faith in the president. You have not heard anybody in the Republican leadership say that.
It's true. James Fallows, David Axelrod, guys, thanks very much. Coming up next, one of the accusers in the Harvey Weinstein scandal is telling her story. Hear what she has to say. The story.
Maria made landfall. Today, the governor of Puerto Rico confirmed the first deaths on the island.
The people go and mine. And I was so proud of that, because West Virginia's had very tough times. And, you know, they were overwhelmingly for me. Yep. Hillary said she wants to close up industries, and she wants to close up the coal industry. And I'm the opposite. So I'm very proud of that. And Pennsylvania, likewise. Very proud.
The biggest obstacle before you arrived here, I had an opportunity to interview a lot of people in this great crowd. And I asked them basically 3 different questions. What they thought of you. Overwhelmingly, there's a lot of support for you here. Congress. Okay. When I asked them about what was your answer on Congress, what was your answer on the media, we saw what happened with health care and John McCain. This economic plan sounds a lot to me like what Reagan did, and that created 20 million new jobs and revenues doubled. This is important for your agenda.
Yeah.
How do you get this through the Senate, which has not had a good record in the last 10 months?
Well, first of all, this will be an even bigger tax cut than the great Reagan cuts. This will be even more dramatic, and I think it will create even more incentive. But let's talk. Media is bad. They're really dishonest people. These are very, very dishonest people in many cases, and not all. Look, I know some reporters, I know some journalists that are phenomenal people and very straight, very honest, but there's such dishonesty. I mean, you know, it's interesting. If I was just watching television, you don't know whether or not, because, you know, you're just watching a report. But when you're the one being written about, you know if it's good or bad, and it's always, they try and make it negative. So the media has turned out, I call it fake media. It's fake. It's so much fake news. And we have to
agree with that,
understand,
fake news?
you know, and I only say it so when people read things, they can understand that so much of it is indeed fake. But with Congress, I've gotten to know a lot of them. There are a lot of good people. Don't forget, for health care, we had 48 votes, 49 votes. We had a lot of great Republicans. We need more Republican senators, to be honest with you. But we had a lot of great... And you have a good one. You have a good one running. Lou. By the way, Lou Barletta, as long as we're on the subject, Lou Barletta, great guy. He's running. He was an incredible congressman. And I think you're going to have a tremendous surge for Lou Barletta. I think he's going to do a fantastic job. So that's it. And we do need more Republican senators because we have a tiny, small, we have 52 to 48, and if a couple of people want to grandstand or whatever they want to do, all of a sudden, because when you have to get almost every single vote, you need 51. So you have to get at least 50 because the Vice President, Mike Pence, great guy, right? Great. He comes out. Oh, he votes. So we need 50. So that means out of all of these people, 2 people decide they want to do something for whatever reason. And in some cases it's grandstanding. Now all of a sudden you don't have health care, but we're going to get it anyway. We have it. We have the numbers now. We're going to get that. And tomorrow I'm signing something that's going to be incredible that I can do myself.
In 1974, there was...
This has to do with, we're going to have great health care, cross state lines. People can buy, will cost the government nothing. You'll go out. Private insurers are going to give you incredible health care. And I'll tell you what, this will take, and I can sign it myself. I don't need anybody. I would have done it earlier, except I was hoping that they were going to put this through and I'd have it in the bill. But we're signing tomorrow a health care package that will cover, I don't know, people say 30%, people say 25%, and some people say it could be 50%. It's going to cover a large percentage of the people that we're talking about.
Truckers would benefit if they unite.
Truckers are perfect for this.
Right.
They unite, they form a group, see?
Right.
The truckers will benefit, they'll form a group. But this will be fantastic. Now, I would have done this immediately, but we were hoping for the health care. So I think health care is going to pass. I can't imagine the largest tax cut for people in our history not passing. But I have to say this. I've met some great, great people that are Republicans, and I've met some great people, frankly. I've met some good people, not necessarily great people, that are Democrats. And I actually think we'll have Democratic support from a few people.
You do?
I do. I do believe that we'll have some Democrat support. We'll get a few votes, maybe. You know, it's interesting. The one thing with the Democrats, they stay together like glue. They're lousy politicians, and their policies are terrible, but they do stick together. We have great policies, but the Republicans tend not to be as unified.
So with some people, you saw and heard Bob Corker.
Yeah.
John McCain wasn't there, even though I can run 100 ads showing John McCain, I'm going to repeal and replace Obamacare. He wouldn't even vote to just repeal it.
Yeah, I know.
So that's got to be frustrating and disappointing.
Well, we thought we had it. The first time we thought it was done. And we thought John was with us. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he voted again. So we end up losing by 1 vote. But here's the thing. We're going to get it. And, you know, I always say never give up, never ever quit. We don't quit. We're there. We're 1 vote short. We're there. I actually think right now we have the vote. But we have to wait. We have to wait for a little while. We're going to do the taxes first. Hopefully we get that. We need 51 votes.
You think you can get it done by the end of the year?
I hope so. I mean, who's going to vote against this? Our country is losing businesses, losing jobs. We have a 1% GDP. Now, I have to tell you, for the last quarter, you had 3%.
3-2.
And actually 3-2, they adjusted it upward. What a nice sound that is. Are they playing that for you or for me? They're playing that in honor of his ratings. Did you see how good his ratings? He's beating everybody.
I think they'll be higher tonight. I'm just guessing.
So the fact is that we're really rocking. We have 3.2. Now, this next quarter coming up, I believe would have even been better. You know, we haven't hit 3s in a long time. So I guess it was ultimately determined it was 3.2 because they adjust upward. But we got hit with a few hurricanes, as you probably heard. That'll have, I assume, an impact.
Barack Obama was the first president in history that never hit 3% GDP growth in a single year of his presidency, which I think speaks volumes.
Well, you know, when I took over, we were in the 1s. And if we hit, think of this, if we hit just 1 point, if we go up from 2 to 3, we pick up $2.5 trillion. $2.5 trillion.
For the Treasury.
And we pick up millions of jobs.
Wow.
So it pays for the whole thing. So it really pays for it. So I think it'll be good.
And coming up, more of my exclusive interview with President Trump. Now he'll weigh in on the NFL kneeling controversy. He'll explain what he thinks the league should have done with Colin Kaepernick. And that and more is straight ahead. Welcome back to Hannity. Now, earlier today, I interviewed President Trump at the 193rd Special Operations Wing at the Air National Guard Base in Middletown, Pennsylvania. Now, here's part 2 of that exclusive interview. Take a look. A lot of people, I was surprised watching all last year with Colin Kaepernick. Guy praised a murdering thug dictator. He had socks that depicted cops as pigs. And other issues. He actually donated to a charity that actually supported a cop killer. And then we saw the NFL. And you took it on, it appears, based on the letter that Roger Goodell put out yesterday, that Donald Trump initiated a debate over standing for the flag and our anthem and those that fought, bled, and died, and looks like you won.
So I watched Colin Kaepernick, and I thought it was terrible. And then it got bigger and bigger and started mushrooming. And frankly, the NFL should have suspended him for 1 game, and he would have never done it again. They could have then suspended him for 2 games, and they could have suspended him if he did it a 3rd time for the season, and you would never have had a problem. But I will tell you, you cannot disrespect our country, our flag, our anthem. You cannot do that.
Obviously, the people of the country are with you. Hundreds of thousands of people fought, bled, hundreds of thousands died fighting under that flag.
Right.
When you look at the Obama years, Chicago, one city, his adopted hometown, 3,900 people were murdered. In the last 6 years of Obama's presidency, 18,000 shootings. I don't think he mentioned it but 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, it's hard to believe.
And disproportionately, his economic policies hurt Black Americans, Hispanic Americans more.
That's very sad.
How will your policies help minorities that are still struggling?
Well, first of all, minorities want police protection more than anybody. They need it more than anybody. It's what's going on is crazy. And you look at some of these inner cities where it's just out of control. And remember, I was saying things like, we will, what do you have to lose? We will fix it. We're going to fix it. But one of the things we're doing very strongly now is the inner cities. Now, Chicago is out of control. I don't know what they're doing in Chicago to have this many shootings and this many killings and all of the different things that are going on. This is not like it's the United States of America. And pure and simple, that's bad management. That's bad politics. It's incredible. And then you talk to them, why aren't you doing something? They don't even want to talk to you about it. It's really insulting to our nation. And whether you take on the NFL or you take on Chicago and some of our other cities, there shouldn't be murders like this. And we have incredible police in this country. They could stop it if they were allowed to do their job. They could stop it. Thank you. And Sean, in many cases, it's the police are not allowed to do their job. They have to be politically correct. We're talking about lives of wonderful people, and they have to be allowed to do their job. And you will see it stop. I'll never forget, I was in Chicago, and a police officer, there was a motorcycle deal to the plane, and I was talking to the police, I was taking a picture. I said, how do you stop this? We could stop it immediately, sir. He said, what do you mean you can stop it immediately? If they'd let us do our job, we could stop it immediately. Now, at some point, you're going to have to let them do their job. And they want to do their job. That's the incredible thing. We did it on the border. The border was like a sieve. Now it's down 78%. And that's without the wall. Wait till you see what happens when we build the wall. But General Kelly has done an incredible job. These are people, they know how to do it, but they have to be allowed to do it. Look at the difference in the border.
So Rudy Giuliani in New York.
Rudy did a fantastic job in New York, and that's an example. And Rudy was on a campaign, and when Rudy endorsed me, to me that was a very important endorsement because he did a great job, especially with respect, well, you could also say economic development, but especially with respect to crime in New York City.
We watched a lot of high-profile incidents during the Obama years. Ferguson, Trayvon Martin down in Florida, Freddie Gray. He said the Cambridge Police Act that stupidly. It seems every 2 or 4 years, and I've been now 30 years in radio. I just started my 23rd year at Fox. That every 2 or 4 years, thank you. Every 2 to 4 years, the Democrats will play the race card, and I resent it as a conservative. Because they'll say, oh, their policies, they're racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic. And meanwhile, their policies haven't helped the minority communities in America. Is there a way, from the federal government's perspective, that you can bring economic opportunity
Totally. I mean, look,
and safety?
and that's what we've said. You look at what's happened in our inner cities. It's horrible what's going on in terms of the death, in terms of shooting. A woman gets up and she wants to go on walking with her beautiful daughter, get a loaf of bread, and she ends up getting shot, or the daughter gets shot. And we can stop it. Don't forget, the Democrats have ruled the inner cities for 100 years. This is their rule. Very rarely do you have a Republican there, but this is their rule. That can be turned around. We can do so many things, but the Democrats have truly ruled. And when I was running, I would always say, what do you have to lose? I remember this came up out of nowhere. I'm reading the statistics of a certain inner city, which were terrible. Education is terrible. Crime rate is terrible. Every single element, economic development, jobs, everybody was unemployed. And I said, I'm saying, and I look at the audience, I say, what the hell do you have to lose? The place went crazy. And then I'd actually use it again and again, and we went up. And we're doing a good job. Ben Carson's doing a great job at HUD. He's got great heart. The Democrats rule the inner cities, and when I say, what do you have to lose, it's so bad that really the Republicans should be starting to do very well. But we're doing a good job, and we're stopping a lot of the crime.
And coming up, more of our exclusive interview with President Trump. Now we're going to ask him about North Korea and their aggression and what he plans to do with the Iranian nuclear deal and much more. Straight ahead. Interview with President Trump. Now I asked him about the North Korean threat, the Iranian nuclear deal, and so much more. Take a look. There was a lot of coverage of your phrase. They would report it in the media, cryptic phrase, the calm before the storm. It seemed related to Rocket Man, his term. Kim Jong-un. In terms of him having ICBM capability, nuclear capability, firing missiles over Japan, our ally, threatening Guam, and potentially maybe being able to reach the United States, continental United States, with a nuclear weapon. At some point, this is going to come to a head. What was the calm before the storm?
We can't let this to go on. We just can't. Now, you can say what you want. This should have been handled 25 years ago. It should have been handled 20 years ago and 10 years ago and 5 years ago. It should have been handled by numerous, not just Obama, but certainly President Obama should have taken care of it. Now it's at a point where it's very, very far advanced. Something has to be done. We can't allow this to happen. Now, China's been very helpful, I think, who knows? They seem to be very helpful. They cut off banking to North Korea. That's something they've never done before. They've cut way down on the fuel, a lot of other things. We're going to see what happens. But we cannot allow this to happen. This should have been taken care of long ago. Clinton gave them billions of dollars, gave them lots of other things, and before the contract, the ink was dry on the contract, they were already starting again with the missiles and with the nuclear, frankly. So we are in a position, look, we're very strong. I'm building up the military like nobody's ever seen. We're close to $800 billion in spending. I don't know if you know, but the military, our military was totally, really depleted. You look around and you see what's going on. You take a look at what we're buying right now with the jet fighters and all of the equipment we're buying. And, it's two things, really. It is jobs, and that's far less important. But we build the greatest military equipment in the world. We have missiles that can knock out a missile in the air 97% of the time. And if you send two of them, it's going to get knocked out.
Is it fair to say if he keeps firing missiles, that's going to end?
Well, I don't want to say anything. I'm just telling you, I don't want to talk about it because, all these people, they talk. I remember with Mosul, and I use this all the time with Mosul. We are going to be attacking Mosul in 4 months. We're attacking Mosul in 3 months. I say, why do they keep saying it? Attack, do it, or don't do it, or whatever. But they kept talking about it. And by the way, it turned out to be hell on wheels. It was hard because they were so totally prepared. And I'm not saying I'm doing anything, and I'm not saying I'm not. But we shouldn't be talking about it.
Calm before the storm, you're not going to talk about that either.
I don't talk about that.
Iran is was interesting. It was interesting. Bill Clinton, when he made the deal with Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, he actually said, this is a good deal for the American people. It was not. It seems the same mistake was made with President Obama and the Iranian deal. There's reports you will decertify this. You can also pull out of it. John Bolton suggesting you just pull out completely. Why decertify and not just scrap it?
Well, you can do both, to be honest with you. You can do both. You can decertify and then, I know exactly what I'm going to do, but I can't give it away tonight. But I'm going to be announcing it very shortly. But
why not, right?
But I will. I mean, there's no secret. I think it was one of the most incompetently drawn deals I've ever seen. $150 billion given. We got nothing. We got nothing. They got a path to nuclear weapons very quickly. And think of this one. $1.7 billion in cash. This is cash out of your pocket. What? You know how many airplane loads that must be? Did you ever see $1 million like a promotion where they have $1 million in $100 bills? It's a lot of. This is $1.7 billion. You'd almost say, who would be authorized to do it? And who are the people that deliver it? You may never see them again, right? But,
plane loads.
But just plane loads. So this is the worst deal. We got nothing. We got nothing. So I'm not giving anything away, but I've been saying this for a long time. You have people dancing and screaming in the streets of Iran. Now, I have to tell you, those people are possibly staged, because I happen to believe the people of Iran are great people and they want freedom and they want to be sort of friendly with us. I really believe that. But they're dancing in the streets and they're singing Death to America, and Kerry's out there negotiating a deal and giving up every single point. He'd go in, we'd like this, you're not having it, done, done, done. It's the worst deal I've ever seen. Whether it's countrywide or any other wide, there is no worse deal. So we will see what happens pretty soon. A lot of people are guessing, but maybe there's not so much guessing. But it was an incompetently drawn deal. Look, it's a very bad deal. I'm not saying anything different tonight that I have been saying for 2 years. Yeah. It's a horrible, horrible embarrassment to our country. And we did it out of weakness when actually we had great strength.
Let me ask you about immigration. You came up with a... And welcome back to Hannity, and we're broadcasting tonight from the 193rd Special Operations Wing at the Air National Guard Base in Middletown, Pennsylvania. Now, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is saying that he has proof that the Russians did not give him the DNC emails. Well, I asked President Trump if he's willing to listen to what evidence Assange has. Let's take a look. I have identified, and I've even talked to this audience, I've never seen any one person face as much in terms of attacks as you have. You have a media that's hostile, you have Democrats that are hostile, you have Republicans that are hostile, a lot of deep state that has been leaking on you. And one of the things that has come up almost throughout your whole presidency is this Russia, 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 Russia obsession. Here's my question. I interviewed Julian Assange 5 times. I've talked to him other times. He has said it's not Russia. There was no collusion. They didn't come, the DNC emails did not come from them. Congressman Dana Rohrabacher met with him, and he says he has proof positive evidence that would show the Trump campaign never colluded with Russia. He just is it in the best interest of the country that if he has that information that he should give it? It seems, I'm guessing here, he wants in return to be left alone. Should the country, does the country deserve to know the truth if he has that?
The country has to know the truth. And also, we can't let anybody play around with our voters and our voter system. But I have to tell you this. So important. But Russia was an excuse used by the Democrats when they lost the election. They said they lost the election. They sat in a room and they said, wow, we look bad. The morning after, in fact, it's been written about, I guess, in various books or a book. But they said, why did you lose the election? They said, it was Russia. Russia. It wasn't Russia. It was a bad candidate. It was a candidate that didn't go to Wisconsin and Michigan, like they said. It was a candidate that spent tremendously more money than I did, as you know, more than double, and didn't do well in Pennsylvania, this great state, didn't do well in Florida, didn't do well in North Carolina or South Carolina, I mean, lost Wisconsin for the first time in decades, lost Michigan. Now, with all of that being said, bad candidate, but they said Russia. Then they say, and it was Trump that colluded with Russia. I'm saying, I did? So look, here's the story, and I think it's helpful. This was an excuse by the Democrats, and people got carried away. This was a terrible, and it's very bad for our country what's happened, because I don't deal with Russia. During this campaign, forget it, forget it. This was an excuse that was used by the Democrats. It was an excuse for losing an election that, frankly, they should have won, because winning the Electoral College is so easy for a Democrat. You have to, they start off with 3 major states, and to win the Electoral College for a Democrat, it's almost like a given. That's why people said, you cannot get to 270. Well, we got to 306, okay, because we won a lot of But I thought it was very sad when I saw this, because they're using excuses. And, you know, one other thing I have to say, the Electoral College I never appreciated. I would rather have a popular vote. For me, it's easier, because you go to different states. For me, the popular vote is easier. But the one thing about the Electoral College, it takes you around to states that you would not go to otherwise. So it's been a great thing. But I say this, we had an unbelievable, unprecedented election. I'm so proud of my people. I'm so proud of you. You know, I did this show when a lot of people said, well, I did it a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I guess people are watching.
Only the second one that since you've been president, but I'm glad to have you.
No, but a lot of people, that's right. Maybe we won't do it anymore with him, right? Hey,
well, come on, help me out
we don't need it so much. But I will say this. I will say this. You have been so great, and I'm very proud of you. And, you know, I'm a ratings person. You notice I always talk. Okay, has anyone seen his ratings? What you are doing to your competition is incredible. Number one, and I'm very proud of you. And it's an honor to be in your show. I have to tell you that, Joe.
Mr. President, I remember one time we had an early conversation, and I'm going to end the interview in this. And this is how I've always felt. You said, well, you know, I have all these things, and maybe you want to play golf on my course one day. You said this long before, we were friends before you ever ran for office. Right. And then when you ran, I just said, I only want one thing. Help our country. Sure. Let's help the forgotten men and women. Let's keep this country safe. Sure. And I think that's our prayer for you and the country. Thank you, sir. The President of the United States. And also tonight, before President Trump's speech, I had a chance to speak to the crowd and ask them what they think about the Trump administration, Congress, the liberal media, and so much more. Watch this. Have you met the president?
I've met the president at a couple rallies, sure.
How do you feel the job he's doing, Congress is doing, and the media?
Well, first of all, the media we're not even going to talk about, because it's a waste of time, because they don't report anything fairly. In terms of the job that the president's doing, Congress needs to get on board and realize Donald Trump, love him or hate him, he is what America picked. So if Congress wants to be reelected in 2018, they should think about what the people voted for in November of 2016.
So how is the president doing?
Great. Excellent.
How is the Congress doing?
Terrible.
How's the president doing?
He's doing a fantastic job so far, I think.
Congress?
Not so fantastic, but, you know, I have hope that we can turn it around.
What do you think of the news media?
Well, I mean, you guys are fabulous, but CNN is fake news.
What do you think of CNN? ABC?
No!
NBC?
No!
CBS?
No!
MSNBC?
No!
How's the president doing?
I think he's doing an absolutely phenomenal job.
Yeah? What do you think of Congress?
I think Congress is being, I feel like they're playing the politics of everything. I think each and every congressman got to understand that, look, we got to do what's right for the country. And listen, I really...
Come together.
Yeah. Yes, and I really think that if Congress can come together and say, look, you know, we're working towards the better of everybody, of all Americans, I think it'll be phenomenal. But
how do you feel about the news media?
I think a lot of the news media is fake, except Hannity. You know, we love Hannity. That's
a promo. I want this promo. How's the president doing?
Wonderful. I feel better every day.
What about Congress?
What about them? Drain the swamp.
Hi, sweetheart. What's your name?
Sayla?
Now, can you stand back and show everybody your beautiful dress? Look at that. You got a Donald Trump dress. Do you like it?
I love it.
How old are you?
I'm 10.
And you like the president?
I love him.
You love him. Why?
Because he does good things for our country.
How's the president doing?
Fantastic.
Good. How is the Congress doing?
Not good. I'm president of the Pennsylvania Motor Truck Association.
God bless you for what you do. I heard you. So how's business?
Business is very good. We're here to support the president, his tax plan. Certainly reduce corporate and individual tax rates are going to help our industry.
Yeah. It worked for Reagan, it worked for Kennedy. Why wouldn't it work now, right?
Absolutely. It's going to enable...
Is Congress going to get this done?
I hope so.
I'm cautiously...
optimistic.
Yeah. How do you feel the news media treats the president?
Horrible.
Horrible.
Horrible. Fake news. Fake news.
You're tired of it?
I'm tired of it.
Yeah. And all of them, pretty much.
Yes. No.
Except me. Oh, wait.
Except Sean
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And we'll have more Hannity right after this break as we continue.
I hate everyone in the White House. Now, that is not me talking. I'm quoting someone, and I'm sure I could be quoting millions of anonymous Americans who say that every day. There are surely many Americans who said that about every White House. But according to the record-high disapproval of President Trump and the Trump White House, it may be that more people have said that about the Trump White House than any previous White House. What is historic about this new quote, "I hate everyone in the White House," is that this is the very first time in history that the person quoted saying that is the President of the United States who lives in the White House. In a new report in Vanity Fair, Gabriel Sherman, who will join us in just a moment, as Rachel just told you, reports that several people close to the president say, quote, that Trump is unstable, losing a step, and unraveling. The article has two sources quoting the president as saying, "I hate everyone in the White House. There are few exceptions, but I hate them." Gabe Sherman reports, according to two sources with knowledge of the conversation, former chief strategist Steve Bannon told Trump that the risk to his presidency wasn't impeachment, but the 25th Amendment, the provision by which a majority of the cabinet can vote to remove the president. When Bannon mentioned the 25th Amendment, Trump said, "What's that?" Joining us now, Gabe Sherman, correspondent for Vanity Fair and MSNBC contributor, David Frum, senior editor for The Atlantic, Jason Johnson, politics editor at TheRoot.com, and an MSNBC contributor. Also with us, David K. Johnston, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who founded the DCReport.org, a nonprofit news organization that covers the Trump administration. And Gabe, I think this might have been the first program where the 25th Amendment was discussed this year, and it seems when I look at it's hard to pinpoint exactly in your article when the president had that conversation with Bannon, but it feels to me like maybe he missed that night of watching this show where he explained it very early in his presidency.
He was too busy clearly watching Fox News. But you know, Lawrence, I think we are, as I point out in the piece, at an inflection point. I think what the sources I spoke to very close to the president told me is that they are concerned about his stability and fitness for office. I think Bob Corker's interview with the New York Times, in which he called the White House, quote, an adult daycare, and worried that the president was putting us on a path to World War III, gave sources around the president comfort to come forward and talk about what people at the highest levels of the Republican Party are talking about in private, which is that this president is erratic. He's lashing out. His moods are dark. He stays up late at night calling people. People who have spoken to him on the phone say he repeats himself over and over again. He rambles in conversations. And this is a situation where General Kelly and those in charge of our national security are doing the best that they can to manage the president of the United States. And I think that is a historic problem that in my political lifetime, and I imagine yours, we have not seen before.
There is an extraordinary passage in your article which I want to read word for word because nothing like it has ever been written before. It says, one former official even speculated that Kelly and Secretary of Defense James Mattis have discussed what they would do in the event Trump ordered a nuclear first strike. Would they tackle him?
Yes, and you know, that is a shocking statement. And the context was for that quote was I was interviewing a former Trump official, and I said, you know, what is keeping General Kelly in the job. I mean, everyone around the White House knows that Donald Trump and John Kelly are not getting along. It's a very contentious relationship. And the source, among others, echoed that he's staying in the job because he is there for national security. And they speculated that because of the president's mood swings and his penchant to latch out, that General Kelly has speculated, talked about what would they do if the president actually did act on these outbursts. And you really have to ask yourself, you physically may need to restrain this man. And now that seems shocking, but at some level, you need to actually boil down what would go down if the president did order a first strike.
Everything in your reporting for Vanity Fair, which everyone really must read, confirms what Senator Bob Corker has said about this chaos in the White House and the adult daycare situation there. David, from another extraordinary passage here in this article, in Gabe's article, is when Bannon tells Trump about what he thinks is likely to happen in his first term. According to a source, Bannon has told people he thinks Trump has only a 30% chance of making it through his full term. David, so that's what someone who's been inside the White House with the president thinks of his possible completion of a first term.
Well, Bannon also enjoys the prospect of chaos, of course. But Bannon is, at the same time, making all of these conditions more likely to befall the president. I mean, he is out there running, or proposing to run primary challenges to Republican senators that increase the odds that the Republicans are going to lose the Senate. One of the things that is really strange about President Trump is he doesn't seem to understand that, for better or worse, and you may deplore this, you may welcome it, that the Republicans in Congress are his only shield. And yet, they are the people with whom he is most at war.
There's a quote tonight in the LA Times that I want to read very carefully that supports what Gabe is reporting. And it says, every time it says MSNBC or CNN, which you know he watches, this is, whenever it says on these networks, this is the adult, thank God they stopped him, it all gets to him. And Jason Johnson, that's talking about when the president's watching these networks, including MSNBC, and we are doing stories about these adults in the White House who are saving us from the chaos that Trump would visit upon us, that really gets to him. That really drives him crazy, apparently.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me. And Lawrence, what this brings to mind for me is what President Obama was saying all throughout campaign 26, and I know that's the past, but his biggest argument against Trump was this man lacks the temperament and the sort of the mental capacity to do this job. We don't just support our president. We don't just vote for presidents because they're smart guys and they've captured the zeitgeist of the country. We need men and maybe one day women who are mentally and emotionally capable of taking criticism, of learning on the job, and being capable of staying focused on the security of this nation above and beyond their petty fights. And this has gone beyond palace intrigue to a point where Donald Trump is not only an international security risk, he is a domestic security risk, and he might be a governmental security risk. And that's something that everybody should be concerned about, especially after reading this piece.
David K. Johnston, there's a line in Gabe's piece, which at this point is just kind of a throwaway line, where the White House responded to the article today, issued a statement saying the president's mood is good. But we now have a White House press office who must issue statements about the president's mood, and that is a new category of statement to be issued by the White House. We've never seen that before.
Well, this is a White House that, lives in a fantasy world, and what a terrible job to have to go out to the public and try to defend here the things that are coming out about Donald. There's an issue, Lawrence, that Gabe's piece brings to the fore that's really important. A large number of Americans, principally Republicans, believe that Donald Trump is under siege, that he is their economic savior, and they've got to somehow have their eyes opened up to the fact that we have a man in the White House who's mentally unstable, he's totally unqualified, he's a con artist who's in a position where he's got to deliver the goods and he has no goods to deliver. And if we don't successfully get a large number of Republicans to pay attention to what you're hearing from people like Corker, we're going to have real trouble with Donald Trump leaving the White House by the 25th Amendment, by impeachment, by anything else, even by election results in 2020.
I want to go to the LA Times reporting tonight, too, because, Gabe, this as a supplement to what you've been reporting. It says allies see signs that Trump is frustrated with Kelly,
yes,
and increasingly unwilling to be managed even just a little. The person close to the White House said that the two men had engaged in shouting matches in recent days.
Yeah, I mean, that clearly dovetails with everything that I'm hearing, and I reported earlier this week that General Kelly has a plan for when Trump returns to Mar-a-Lago later this month, that he wants to keep him out of the dining room, which people who know I've been to Mar-a-Lago, it's very difficult. I mean, Trump, that's his house. I mean, he believes he can go everywhere in the house. And Kelly does not want Trump to be mingling and getting unsolicited policy advice from guests and members. Now, this is emblematic of Kelly trying to manage a president who fundamentally does not want to be managed.
And David, we have reports tonight that Sean Hannity has sometimes more influence than John Kelly over the president, especially on the matter of immigration. And after there was a deal struck with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, Sean Hannity apparently talked the president out of that deal.
Well, at the same time, the president seems to think that that if he can do a deal, or the people around the president and his own family, would think if he can do a deal with the Democrats, that will somehow shut down the Mueller investigation, and that's one of the reasons they're so interested in it. And that won't happen either. So it's possible that he may be getting better advice from Sean Hannity than from some of his intimates.
And David Kay, you've studied Donald Trump longer than any of us. You've dealt with him directly, written books about him. Give us your sense of temperamentally, emotionally, given everything that's been reported, where you think Donald Trump is tonight in the White House.
Well, he's had this nice meeting tonight in Harrisburg where Sean Hannity was throwing him softballs. There was some booing as I listened to that broadcast, or a portion of it. But Donald is going to be increasingly frustrated by the fact that he knows that he is not getting the kind of adoration that he totally and completely depends on to fill this empty vessel inside of himself. And he's trying to figure out some way to do it. And this concern that's been coming out about him and nuclear weapons, which he said during the campaign he was going to use nuclear weapons, goes to that. It shows you the leaks that came from the Pentagon tell you that there is deep concern that, as Gabe reports in this really good piece in Vanity Fair, Donald may do something preemptive. And of course, tonight, he said that it's his attitude that matters. Well, no, under the Constitution, it's Congress that declares war. But we should be very, very worried about his deteriorating emotional state. It's not good and safe for anyone in the world so long as Donald Trump has access to the football.
And Jason Johnson, it may be hard for people to remember, but when General John Kelly was coming into the White House, one of the things that was going to happen is that the leaking was going to stop. And the only thing that's happened to the leaking is it's gotten better and better and better. And we have even better, stronger leaked reporting by Gabe Sherman and others.
Oh yeah, this is going from ketchup bottle to a geyser. Like it's leaking all the time, and it has to. And Lawrence, the main reason why, and the reason that we get these sort of excellent reports as this piece in Vanity Fair, is because you have people in the White House who recognize, and it's one of the things that's sort of written about consistently. Donald Trump doesn't listen in meetings. He will not sit down and concentrate. He will not focus. The only way that people can somewhat corral his behavior is by leaking, is by getting something that ends up on the air. Because in those 2 or 3 minutes on television that Donald Trump pays attention to, maybe that will somehow corral his behavior. And it's a problem when you have a president who won't listen to his own advisors.
Gabe Sherman, extraordinary reporting. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. David K. Johnston, thank you for joining us too. Really appreciate it. Coming up, the Trump meeting that apparently provoked Rex Tillerson to call the president a moron. We now have more details on that meeting, and Senator George Mitchell, former Majority Leader of the United States Senate, will join us. Also, President Trump's interview with Sean Hannity tonight, it just ended. It was just about as tough as you think it would be, and there was booing. Of course, the booing was at the mention of the name John McCain.
It was on the same page as the Secretary of State Tillerson. Here's what he said.
I think I have a little bit different attitude on North Korea than other people might have. And I listen to everybody, but ultimately my attitude is the one that matters, isn't it? That's the way it works. That's the way the system is. But I think I might have a somewhat different attitude and a different way than other people. I think perhaps I feel stronger and tougher on that subject than other people.
So, Dan, is that kind of language that has folks on Capitol Hill concerned, right? I mean, senators like Bob Corker questioning the president's fitness.
Yes, but I think more importantly in this case, in the immediate future, it's also very clear, as if it wasn't last week or the week before, that the president, has a very different idea of what to do on a whole bunch of issues, but particularly North Korea, than his own Secretary of State. I mean, he called him out on Twitter 2 weekends ago for going to try to talk to the North Koreans, saying, "Don't waste your time, Rex," to his own Secretary of State. I mean, Tony, I probably can't even fathom that as somebody who worked in the State Department. But beyond that, if you look at and listen to the president's language, I'm stronger and tougher on North Korea. Well, he's trying to kind of lead with the positive, but what he's really saying, because I've sort of heard this from people who have talked to him about the way he talks about his Secretary of State, is that he thinks that he's weak, and that he doesn't think that he's up to the task on areas and on policy making like North Korea. And it's just one more piece of evidence of that very troubled relationship, and that has real consequences for how the president can use him as a representative, which is his job, for the president around the world.
You know, David, the president spent most of the day calling out
as the president left the room, because as NBC News reported today, President Donald Trump said he wanted what amounted to a nearly tenfold increase in the U.S. nuclear arsenal. Trump's comments, the official said, came in response to a briefing slide he was shown that charted the steady reduction of U.S. nuclear weapons since the late 1960s. Now, here is an example of that chart that the president was shown, indicating a peak of about 32,000 nuclear weapons in the late 1960s, down to a low of approximately 4,000 today. And what you see at the top of that chart is the U.S. government chart. There are the notations of the various treaties that the United States entered into over that period of time that led to the reduction of nuclear weapons in the United States and the Soviet Union and then Russia. You see SALT I, SALT II, START I, START II. NBC News reported today that officials briefly explained the legal and practical impediments to a nuclear buildup and how the current military posture is stronger than it was at the height of the buildup. The July 20th meeting was described as a lengthy and sometimes tense review of worldwide U.S. forces and operations. It was soon after the meeting broke up that officials who remained behind heard Tillerson say that Trump is a moron. Some officials in the Pentagon meeting were rattled by the president's desire for more nuclear weapons. It's unclear which portion of the Pentagon briefing prompted Tillerson to call the president a moron after the meeting broke up, and some advisors were gathered around. Officials who attended the 2-hour session said it included a number of tense exchanges. Tense exchanges with a president the Secretary of State apparently regards as a moron, and that president publicly describes the meeting as great. This may be one of many such meetings that Republican chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee says he has heard about that have led him to this conclusion.
I think Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Mattis, and Chief of Staff Kelly are those people that help separate our country from chaos.
And this week, Senator Bob Corker described the Trump presidency's chaos as putting us on the path to World War III. Joining us now, George Mitchell, a former U.S. Senator from Maine who was the Senate Majority Leader. He was also a Mideast negotiator for President Clinton. Senator, I've never seen any conditions like this. I've never heard of meetings like this. You've been at this longer than most people I know. Have you ever in a meeting where somebody referred to a president as a moron?
No, and I think it's most unfortunate. But Lawrence, that segment demonstrated, I think, rather clearly that we are at a dangerous moment in our history. The president made many controversial statements during the presidential campaign, many of which he's since reversed. That NATO was obsolete, now he's for it. He's going to brand China currency manipulator on the first day. He hasn't done so. The one statement that concerned me the most, which to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware that he's reversed it, is when he said it might be a good thing if South Korea, Japan, and Saudi Arabia got a nuclear weapon. To me, that demonstrated a lack of understanding of the history of nuclear weapons. First, how unique they are, so vastly different from any weapon that's ever been devised or used in armed conflict. But secondly, how the United States has led the world in enacting a regime to restrain the dissemination of nuclear weapons. That's been a principal foreign policy objective of the United States for over half century, largely successful. There are dozens of countries that now have the capacity to build a nuclear weapon. The majority of them have refrained from doing so in reliance upon the United States and the nuclear non-proliferation regime. We should not be trying to expand the number of nations. We should be trying to contract it and to reduce the number of weapons. And here we are now with the president about to take a step with respect to Iran that will place us in a perilous situation, just as we're trying to deal with the situation in North Korea. Unless the Senate shows restraint, the United States will soon be faced in Iran with two terrible choices. Either to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon, which will dissolve the non-proliferation regime, or go to war to prevent it. In North Korea, it's very dangerous, as we all know, given the nature of the regime and the leader there, and this bellicose rhetoric back and forth. These are very dangerous times, and my hope is that the president himself will first reverse the statements that I referred to and exercise some restraint, and if he does not do so, that the Senate will do so, because it has it in its power to maintain the treaty with Iran.
I want to play you what the president said just in the last hour on Fox News to Sean Hannity about the Iran deal, and he talks about money in here as if it came out of the American taxpayer's pocket. Let's listen to this.
I think it was one of the most incompetently drawn deals I've ever seen. $150 billion given. We got nothing. We got nothing. They got a path to nuclear weapons very quickly. And think of this one, $1.7 billion in cash. This is cash out of your pocket. What? You know how many airplane loads that must be? Did you ever see $1 million like a promotion where they have $1 million in $100 bills? It's a lot of. This is $1.7 billion. You'd almost say, who would be authorized to do it? And who are the people that deliver it? You may never see them again, right? Plane loads. But just plane loads. So this is the worst deal. We got nothing. We got nothing.
It's impossible for me to tell whether he knows he's lying about the cash coming out of our pockets.
Well, with respect to the office of the presidency, his statement is a complete misrepresentation of the terms of the agreement. What we've gotten is that, as we all know, Iran is in full compliance with the terms of the agreement. They've reduced their stockpile of uranium by 98%. They've rendered inoperable a major facility. They've reduced the number of operating centrifuges by 2/3, and they've submitted to the most intensive inspection regime that ever has existed with respect to such weapons. And the president himself has twice certified that they are in compliance with the agreement, as has the independent agency conducting it. The agreement is imperfect, as are all negotiated agreements. Both sides give something. It would be better if it were permanent, but that was not attainable. So I think it's a valuable step forward, and contrary to his statement, it doesn't put Iran on a path to nuclear weapon. It does just the opposite.
Senator Mitchell, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Always appreciate it. Great honor. Coming up,
is very much become a hypocrite on this issue. The guy didn't even vote in the elections. He didn't even register to vote.
That's all well and good. Listen, and I think you're right. But
a lot of Americans see it that way.
Hold on, because you're saying in a way that is fitting. Who's to say which way you should protest is fitting? It wasn't seen as a protest of the flag until the president made it that issue. As a matter of fact, as you know, Colin Kaepernick spoke to a veteran who said, I think it would be more respectful if you kneel instead of sat during the national anthem. And the president made it into an issue. Why couldn't the president say, there's a reason that Colin Kaepernick, as Van said, is not standing during the national anthem. I represent all Americans. Let's understand why he's not standing and see if we can come to some sort of
because
agreement.
I think there's I don't know if you're going to have a consensus as long as people simply see by a lot of these players flat out disrespect for the flag. Now hold on.
It wasn't seen that way until the president made it into an issue.
Well, a lot of the players also didn't protest until they started to protest Donald Trump. You had whole teams stay in the locker room. You had whole teams come out that had never come out before.
Someone is telling you how to be an American. Someone is forcing. Why would you force? Why are you forcing patriotism on someone?
Let's be clear.
You can't force
forcing it. The president has a right, and I think this is an obligation. Every president has an obligation to protect and defend the honor and the integrity of the flag, the national anthem, because of the President of the United States of America.
Which is respecting that. Well, first of all,
no one's saying they don't have a right to protest, though. I want to make that clear.
Everyone picks and chooses about it. We don't even know if it's right, according to the flag code, to have the flag stationary behind him in that interview they did with Fox tonight. Because the flag is supposed to be free flowing. But everyone picks and chooses how they want to respect or disrespect the flag. We all know it's politics and it's hypocrisy.
Here's my thing.
Because if you're respecting the flag and the national anthem and what this country was built on, the people who fought and died for you to be able to protest in whatever way you want to. That is the American way.
You know that it's inappropriate during the national anthem to chug a beer. The same way you know it's inappropriate to blow bubbles in church.
I'm in a bar almost every weekend during football season, having wings and beer, and everybody's chugging beers, and I look around.
I'm saying when you're at the
screaming about people not standing.
When you are at the field, you know it's different. Don't act like
how
it's
is it different? Why is it even done? Why is it even done?
To honor.
Why is it done?
Let me answer the question. It's to honor the United States of America, what we become as a country.
Know we're in
If you're
America.
going to ask a question, at least let me finish it.
But you're giving some bull crap answer.
You don't like my answer.
No, it's not.
You don't like my answer.
Answer is bull. It's not true. Because we know we're in America. It's not as if we're playing some international country. It's two American teams playing each other. We know that we're on American soil.
You're
we have
smarter than this.
No,
you're smarter than this.
No, don't tell me I'm smarter than that. Yes, I'm smarter than the answer. I'm smarter than the bullshit answer that you're giving.
Do you put your feet? It's not BS.
It is bullshit.
It's not
total BS.
This is exactly the reason why so many Americans disagree with you, because of the arrogance and the lack of respect for the American flag and men and women that died for this country. It absolutely is. It's called BS to stand for the national anthem.
Every single day in school, I stood for the national anthem because it's appropriate to stand in school. A ball game is a completely different thing. You just made the point by saying people are eating chicken wings and chugging beers.
No, I said when you're at the game, you don't go and chug a beer when there's a flag on the field in the national anthem. That's not BS, Don. That's called respect for this country.
If you want to in America,
you can. It doesn't mean it's right. You absolutely have. You can. It doesn't mean it's an
Let me ask you something.
It doesn't mean it's an honorable thing to do.
Maybe we should ask that question. Go on.
The definition of honorable, the definition of appropriate, the definition of whether you should do it or not, is a subjective definition, right? There is nothing written in the Constitution that says you can't chug a beer or that you have to stand. And the Constitution does not cherry pick. This week I saw a lot of people who were applauding Mike Pence for protesting the people protesting.
Right.
So they were applauding his right to protest.
Which was a stunt.
Right, fine. But you know what? Here's the thing. The U.S. Constitution does not cherry pick rights. We all have the same equal rights to protest. So you cannot, on the one hand, applaud Mike Pence for protesting and have an issue with the football players protesting. Now, I do have an issue with Mike Pence spending my money to stage a protest, but I don't have, if he wants to do it in his living room and kneel or stand or nap or scream or throw things at the TV, that's his right. What he doesn't have a right to do is pilfer my money.
Can you hold it after the break? We'll be right back.
Have that confirmed on a daily basis. I hope someday we'll be surprised, but probably won't be.
And David Frum, there were many striking moments in this, including, of course, talk about the NFL. But one of the moments that struck me, which is historically one of the strangest turns we've ever seen, Is Sean Hannity talking about Julian Assange and saying that Julian Assange, he's talked to him, he knows the information that Julian Assange has, and Julian Assange can absolutely prove that Russia had nothing to do with interfering in this election. And if you would just allow him to come back to the country, it seemed like Sean Hannity was trying to broker a pardon with the president for Julian Assange to come to the United States and acquit the president of any possible connection to Russia.
Right. Well, remember, the reason Julian Assange was in hiding for all those years was not because of a charge under U.S. law, but because of rape charges in Sweden. So Fox News is sort of pivoting from saying, why doesn't every Democratic county commissioner say something about Harvey Weinstein, to then saying, oh, by the way, why don't we have a pardon for this, our celebrity rapist? But what I was struck by in the president's answer was how cautious the president was. I mean, Sean Hannity set up the Sean Rich, he didn't use the name this time, conspiracy theory that Julian Assange and his Russian masters have promoted, which is it wasn't a Russian hack that got the DNC caches and John Podesta's emails, but it was a purported insider. Trump refused to bite on that bait. He instead said Russia's a fake, he gave a lot of non-specific denials, but he did not go down the conspiracy theory path, nor did he repeat praise of Julian Assange, who is someone who has been attacking American national security now for close to a decade.
And Jason, the president has a 67% disapproval rating for the job he's supposed to be doing in the White House. He also has a 58% disapproval rating for the other job he's trying to do, that is NFL commissioner. The latest poll showing that 58% do not approve of Donald Trump's comments and interference with the NFL. Let's listen to Commissioner Trump tonight on the NFL.
I watched Colin Kaepernick, and I thought it was terrible. And then it got bigger and bigger and started mushrooming. And frankly, the NFL should have suspended him for one game, and he would have never done it again. They could have then suspended him for 2 games, and they could have suspended him if he did it a 3rd time for the season, and you would never have had a problem. But I will tell you, you cannot disrespect our country, our flag, our anthem. You cannot do that.
Jason, your reaction?
First off, I find it highly entertaining that you have an audience of people saying, clapping and cheering when Trump says you can't disrespect the flag, but they booed John McCain, the guy who was a POW defending our flag and what our country stands for. But I think what's also really interesting about this, I don't know what it is about failed presidents who want to be commissioners. Remember George Bush actually wanted to be the baseball commissioner at one point. This is clearly the job that Trump is angling for if he ends up leaving the White House early. But it demonstrates his obsession with those things that he thinks he can control through narrative and through bullying as opposed to policy, deal making, and negotiation. You would think that a president who has accomplished as little as Trump has accomplished, who is as unpopular as he is, would be talking more about the Iran deal instead of just one question, would be talking about how he's going to work with Congress. Instead, he wants to focus on football because that's something he thinks he can win because he's obviously give up on actually being a legislator and running the country.
And Anna Marie, just for the constitutional record, whenever I hear the president and people like him saying you cannot disrespect the flag, the United States Supreme Court has held that you can. You can burn it. You can use it for toilet paper. You can do whatever you want with it. That is what the First Amendment allows you to do with it. Whether you should or not is a matter of opinion, but whether you can is not.
No, it's not. Also, you don't have to stand for the national anthem. You don't have to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. When I was a young punk rocker, I took great pride in the fact that I had that right because I was kind of a little jerk. I probably wouldn't do that today, except what we've found that it is to great effect to do these things, right? We are talking more about the causes that Colin Kaepernick wanted us to talk about than we were before he started, and we still are. And I think that these players know that. And I predict that it's really hard to play football without people of color on the field. So I suspect that we're not going to see any grand ruling about this. I think someone said there would be an uproar in the NFL if this happened. Then I hope not. As an American, I take as much pride in them protesting to call attention to injustice as I do seeing my team win. Of course, my team is the Giants, so I'm really actually more with the protesters right now.
And David, Sean Hannity did stick with the president and pressed him on DACA and went after it more than once. Of course, this is the subject that apparently
didn't agree with the
Senate.
Senate.
But I think the most black protests are
You're always telling people how to protest. You don't like it when they scream. You don't like it when they're quiet.
True.
You don't like it when they stand. You don't like it when they kneel.
That's not true.
This is an appropriate way. You
That's
want
just not
people
true.
to protest behind closed doors where it
that's
does
not
not
true.
get attention.
Here, I said this before.
come on,
Colin Kaepernick, how many times did Colin Kaepernick go out when he wasn't registered to vote and didn't vote to a Black Lives Matter protest? How many times did he go to the inner city and talk about protests? Yes, I did actually, to 2. And I sat down with a core group of people in my hometown of Memphis to talk about it. So don't call out like that. That's not fair.
I want to get this on. Rapper Eminem slamming President Trump in an explosive rap at the BET Hip Hop Awards.
What we got in office now's a kamikaze that'll probably cause a nuclear holocaust. And while the drama pops and he waits for to quiet down, he'll just gas his plane up and fly around till the bombing stops.
This blew up everywhere. I mean, when it happened last night, you're going to talk about this, you're going to talk about this, and it's been going now for about 24 hours. Listen, protest music is nothing new.
Right.
So
back to Woody Guthrie. I mean,
this seems to take it to a whole new level. Because I look at the 50, the 10, the 50, biggest protest songs, and there are a lot of them there by all different kinds of artists.
Look, I think that hip hop, spoken word, has been. It started off as a weapon for the weak to speak out and to be heard, and then it got turned into a bunch of stuff that you can't let your kids listen to for too long. And so I don't like some of the profanity because I don't want my kids to listen to that. But the idea that somebody's going to step on the stage and try to be relevant and use their art to make a difference, I think is a very good thing. And the fact that
I'm Donald Trump, I'm always right. I know a winner when I see one. And Donald Trump is telling you right now, Slim Shady is a winner. He's got brains, he's got guts, and he's got Donald Trump's vote.
Yeah, that was today, just a few minutes ago.
There's a tweet or a video clip for
That was him back, praising him back at the, on a skit at MTV in 2004. So that's a bit ironic, don't you
Damn
think?
miracle he didn't name him vice president.
He's not saying anything now. Usually he jumps on people who criticize him. Why isn't he saying anything about it?
I don't want none of that. I don't. Hey, listen. You notice he never spoke back to Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama wore Trump out speech after speech. He never said a word. I think he knows who we can deal with and who we can't. I don't think he wants Slim Shady.
Yeah. We got to talk about Van's book.
Thank you.
Beyond the Messy Truth. It's a new book that's out. Van
physically may need to restrain this man, and now that seems shocking, but at some level you need to actually boil down what would go down if the president did order a first strike.
And he had a Trump source saying that they've actually discussed, do we tackle him? Is that the kind of thing that worries Republican members of the House of Representatives?
That should worry every American, and I think, that quote gets to one of the things that we worry about most, which is that the president is commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces, and even though our Constitution says that war-making power resides with my institution, the Congress of the United States, we go to bed at night, I think Democrats and Republicans alike, worried that the president may wake up with indigestion and decide that he's going to launch a strike on North Korea or do something unwise with Iran. So this is not a political thing, this is an American thing. We rely on this commander-in-chief to be prudent and thoughtful about how he uses the most powerful military that history has ever known. Now look, what John Kelly and H.R. McMaster and what Secretary Mattis talk about, these are guys who know what combat means, who know what wars mean, who have seen young men and women die, something the president has not. So I can't begin to speculate on the conversations that they have in the dark of night about what they might or might not do if the president ordered something that would be, that would be bad for the country and bad for a lot of our